A middle-aged man in an epic midlife crisis encounters love, no, lust, in the most unexpected of places. What was once a passion is now an obsession, an unquenchable desire. He is
the Synthesizer Addict.
Hello, my name is Jeff. Hi, Jeff. And I am a synthaholic. That's right, I am a bona fide synthesizer addict. And this is the very first episode of The Synthesizer Addict. This is a show that will cater to all of my fellow synthaholics out there on the interwebs. What we'll do every week is we'll do reviews of new and vintage synthesizers. We'll do some tech episodes in which we do repairs on broken or slightly mangled old synthesizers. Then we'll jam out, we'll make some music, we'll have some fun, we'll bring some people in the studio and we'll play all these wonderful synthesizers and all these other various instruments that I have kicking around here. Today's episode, what we're going to do is we're going to go and take a tour of the studio. We're going to go over every single synthesizer that we have here, give you a little bit of history as to why I acquired each one of these things, any open projects or repairs that we'll cover in future episodes, and maybe play one or two of them. After that, it is time for
the question of the week.
That's right, the question of the week. So here's how this will work. I will ask a question of you guys, and then it will be up to you guys to comment down in there in the YouTube comments below. Or if you want to take it to Facebook, we got facebook.com/thesynthezizeraddict, or we've got twitter.com, and I am at synth_addict. So any one of those places, we'll continue on the conversation, we'll build a nice little, synthaholic community, and should be a lot of fun. Speaking of fun, we're going to end this episode with one of my very favorite synthesizers, the Waldorf Blofeld. And we're going to program a sound from scratch. And I think what we'll do is we'll use noise as a pitched oscillator. So I don't know if any of you guys have ever tried that before, but you can come up with a really kind of airy, ethereal type sound, spacey kind of sound out of it. So it should be cool. It should be a lot of fun. But first and foremost, before we do any of that stuff, we got to clean up this pigsty of a studio. So what better way to do that than with a
studio cleanup montage?
That's right, a studio cleanup montage. So let's get started. right, we're back. And do not adjust your sets. We've moved to a wide angle lens. I've moved you way up on the top of my rack of misfit devices here in the hopes that you guys can see as much as possible in one big shot. So we'll start off with my main studio controller. This is a Kurzweil MIDI board. It is 88 key weighted action with polyphonic aftertouch. Kind of neat, huh? You can be super expressive with it. It's almost kind of a Vangelis type sound. There's some issues with this board, and in future episodes we'll tackle this. We have some crosstalk between my sliders here, so we'll address that at a future date. We had some sticky keys, but I've already taken care of that. It needs to be cleaned up a little bit, so again, maybe we'll do that in a montage in a future episode. One of the other nice things about the MIDI board is that it has a nice long flat top. So that's great for stacking desktop style synth modules on top of it. So we have kind of hidden in here the Dave Smith Instruments Mofo, which I haven't quite fallen in love with yet. I think we'll deal with that in a future episode. We also have two of the three Roland Boutique synthesizers. So we've got the JU06, which is kind of a modern day take on the Juno 106, and the JX03, which is kind of a modern day take on the JX3P. After that, we have one of my favorites, the Waldorf Blofeld. What a great sound, huh? And that's almost exclusively using noise as as the sound source. Really good stuff. I love the Blofeld. All right, up next, we've got a Kawai K4R and a Korg EX-M1R. Let's move on. We've got the Waldorf Rocket. Sometimes it's just nice to have a really simple synthesizer where every single function is available to you via a small handful of knobs. And you can just, within a couple seconds, get a good sound out of it. Sometimes that's just all that you want. And that, to me, is the Rocket. So I really like this. It's an awful lot of fun. It's light, it's portable, it's USB powered. I've really enjoyed having it. Moving on, we have, on loan from my son, the Monotron Delay and the Monotron Duo from Korg. All right, next, we have the Gakin SX150 Mark II. All right, next, we have our pocket operator. This is the PO20 Arcade. Hold that up to the GoPro for you. This one's really neat, and I think we'll visit this in a future episode. I can sync this up to my Korg SQ1, and by doing that, I can kind of sync it up with everything here. One other thing that we'll talk about is the CME X key. I don't know if I have that. Oh, there we go. So it's a small, 20-something key keyboard, but it also has polyphonic aftertouch. So basically, this gives me the ability to have polyphonic aftertouch on the go. How cool is that? So here we have Korg's reissue of the ARP Odyssey. Some people have complained about the mini keys. It's MIDI'd, so if I want to use big keys, I can use big keys. Heck, let's do that right now. Since it has all of the CV gate trigger patch panels on the back that the original did, and since it has MIDI, that effectively allows me to it effectively becomes a CV to MIDI converter. Right now I have it connected via CV gate to the workstat, the Moog workstat. That'll be the next thing that we talk about here. Oh, what a sound, huh? I can play my workstat from the Kurzweil. How cool is that? Okay, next is a bona fide vintage analog synthesizer that unfortunately is having some issues. As you can kind of see here in the GoPro with the little screwdrivers and a couple of the trim pots. This was rock solid for me for years and years and years. When I got the Odyssey, I connected the CV gate out from the Odyssey into the CV gate ins on the Solus, and it worked great. I had everything calibrated perfectly, and basically, it made for this 4 oscillator beast. One day I decided to get cute and plug in a cable from the low audio out into the external audio in on the Odyssey. And when I did that, I think what probably happened is I blew a cap on the Solus or something like that. I mean, nothing, I didn't do anything wrong. It just, it's one of the joys of having old, this probably dates back to 1979 or 1980, just one of the joys of having old equipment. Unfortunately, it knocked out the calibration on Oscillator 2, and I can't turn this trim pot far enough. It's just a little bit off, and I can't turn this any further to get it calibrated correctly. It's very frustrating. And I think I need to recalibrate VCO 1 too. Yeah, his calibration's off. Boy, so that's a project that will definitely be a future episode. And we are back. We've moved, obviously. We have the Ensoniq over here, and we have a few other kind of rack-mounted desktop modules over here. So let me quickly go through these. You've already heard some sounds from the VFX, which I think is a terribly underrated synthesizer. You'll see up on the screen here, the review on vintagesynth.com says that it, filter's kind of weak. Are you kidding me? Let's play. I don't know, does that sound weak to you? It sounds freaking fantastic to me. Don't believe everything that you read online. All right, next. We have a TX7, so that basically this is a desktop version of the DX7. There are 2 fully functioning synths in here now that I don't have plugged in and really connected to anything. And this first one is a Yamaha TX81Z. I've had this since I was a sophomore in high school. I've had this for an awfully long time. This is a relatively new addition to my synth collection. This is the JV1080 from Roland. 64-note polyphonic synth that, was hugely popular in the 90s. I mean, you go through the first several presets and you can immediately pick out some very popular songs that these things came from. Next, we've got the Kurzweil K2500 RS, courtesy of my friend Hacksaw. He was clearing out his collection and getting rid of all of his hard synths, replacing them with soft synths. I was more than willing to take it off of his hands. All right, guys, this is it. This is the home stretch. We are on our last handful of synthesizers. We're going to start off with the EX5, which is for sale. This used to be my controller, and it did not make for a good controller because its aftertouch sensitivity was it was way too sensitive. Just give it a little bit of a touch, and aftertouch would go right off the charts. Onward. D50. I know know these sounds have been heard a million times, but they still sound good. They still sound good. So this thing I got cheap, because when the store that I got it from got it, it would turn on, but everything was all garbled. So that told me that there was an internal battery issue, and that was kind of right. It looks like this might have been a second board for somebody, a parts board for somebody. There's an expansion board, a Musitronics expansion board that's on here, but it looks like there's a chip missing. So every time it starts up, we get the internal battery error, and I think what I'm going to do in a future episode is just remove the expansion board, because like I said, I think it's missing a part. I think it's missing its memory chip, which is kind of a critical part. So I'm going to get rid of that. I'm just going to turn this into a stock D50, and I think it'll continue to work great. So moving on, we've got an original Korg wave station. This is one that I got from that same store. They saw nothing on the display, so they said, all right, well, it works, but there's no display, so it's as is. Well, I just turned up the contrast on the display, and it works fine. Yes, it's missing its backlight. Pretty much every wave station these days, it's not that the backlight is missing, it's just that the backlight is not functioning anymore. So maybe we'll replace that in a future episode, but otherwise, this thing works great. All right, moving on. We've got CL DK70. This is essentially a rebadged Korg Poly 800 from what I understand, with a couple differences. So it's my understanding that the filter is a little bit different. It's a little bit warmer in this guy. But also, this guy responds to MIDI CC, which is great. So you can actually program it from the BCR 2000, and you can control the filter, and you can do filter sweeps, and it has a really deep resonant filter. I did have to open it up and adjust a couple trim pots to kind of open up the filter a little bit, make it a little bit more responsive, a little bit more edgy. But it's a nice sounding board. Yeah, it's another one of those boards where the synthesis engine really isn't that powerful. But man, who cares? It sounds good. And it's a keytar. It's a flippin' keytar. Now, some astute viewers have probably seen my other YouTube channel and saw a DK70 repair video. That box is still in the corner. That board is still in the corner. I took a couple parts from him and put it into this guy. I found this guy on eBay cheap. He had less wrong with him than my other one. So basically I've gutted my other one and made this a working one. Still a few things that I need to do to clean her up, but she works pretty well. Moving on, we've got an Alpha Juno. This is an Alpha Juno 2. So again, nice velocity, Aftertouch sensitive keyboard. We do have one bad key. So that's going to be a future episode right there where we'll see what we can do to fix this key. But everything else should work. When I found this one. This, as the Alpha Juno 2 continues to sustain, this is the newest addition to the collection. This is a Kawai K5, and I just recently traded a Roland JV80 keyboard for this guy. I like oddball synthesizers, and this guy is probably the biggest oddball in my collection. He's an additive synth. So kind of take everything that you know about making sounds on a synthesizer and throw it out the window, because he does things completely differently. Basically, you're stacking different harmonics of sine waves on top of one another. I think very underrated, because it is so difficult to program. But it doesn't sound like anything else. It doesn't sound like anything else in my collection. Last but not least, for the collection of working synthesizers here, We've got the Korg DW8000. This is a board, I'm shocked that the value of this board on the used market hasn't skyrocketed. Because it's a cool sounding board, it's very versatile. It's a nice integrated arpeggiator. And it has a unique character, a unique, unique sound that you don't get on, any other synths at all, really. Velocity sensitive, aftertouch sensitive, really cool board. We'll be spending some time with this. This is one that I found on Craigslist. It was cheap because well, according to the seller, it wasn't working. It would power on, but none of the patches made any sound. So immediately I saw that and I said, you know what? That's got to be a bad internal battery. So I replaced the internal battery, reloaded the sounds, and voila, I have a working DW8000 that has no other issues other than the fact that I desperately need to dust it. We've got a few last things. We've got a Kawai K1. Oh, nuts. All right, finally, in this corner here, we've got a Kawai K1. I just ran out of room for this guy. There's no filter. It's essentially just a Rompler, but I don't know. There's just kind of a gritty, lo-fi character to it that I like. We've got the dead DK70. I won't even bother to dig that guy out. And then finally, we have the very first synthesizer that I ever got. Got this when I was 12 years old. Ugh. I need to dust this too. I need a dust cover for it. It's my DX100. This one needs a little bit of work. I'm hoping that it's just a replacement of the internal battery. But we shall see. He's got some issues. So, but this was my very first board. I got this when I was 12 years old, and I learned to program off of this. So when people talk about the DX series being difficult to program, I don't know, I just kind of grew up on programming these things, so they don't really intimidate me too much. So that's it. That's the collection. We'll move on to the next segment. Hey guys, we're back. What did you think of the tour? Did you like what you saw? By all means, let me know what you liked and what you didn't like down there in the comments. Down there in the YouTube comments below. And I will try to tailor future episodes to the stuff that you guys actually liked and try to cut out the stuff that you guys didn't like. Moving on, changing topics. It is time for
The question of the week.
That's right, the question of the week. And this week's question is, where do you guys think the state of synthesizer innovation is today? And what are the innovative synthesizers that have come out within the last few years? The reason I ask is that there have been some synthesizers that have come out recently, a lot of synthesizers that have come out recently that I don't think are particularly innovative at all. They're kind of retreads of technology that has come out years ago, sometimes 20 or 30 years ago. Case in point, the Yamaha Montage. It is a very nice Rompler, kind of sample playback machine. It has nice advanced FM synthesis, and it has a very sexy, giant, glowing nipple of destiny right up there, that when you turn it, it actually changes multiple things instead of single things. Ooh. Is that really innovative? Or is that really just a slightly more polished version of an SY77 with a giant nipple and no sequencer? So it's kind of struck a nerve with me, and I'm trying my best to think of, where is the innovation today? What's new? Probably 20 years ago I thought that physical modeling, synthesis was going to be where it's at, and that's going to take over. And then a few years later, some other wonderful technology is going to come and completely blow us away. That hasn't really happened. So you guys tell me, where is the innovation? Where can I find innovative synthesis and synthesizers? Let me know in the comments below, facebook.com/thesynthezizeraddict or Twitter @synth_addict. And you know what we're going to do now? We're going to move on to my favorite part. This is going to be where we program a new sound into the Waldorf Blofeld. Let's get started. Hey folks, we are back with segment number 3, where we're going to program a sound from scratch using the Waldorf Blofeld. I'm going to try to sit out of the way here so you can always see the Blofeld's screen, what knobs that I'm turning, and all that good stuff. So it's going to be kind of an awkward playing angle, but you guys will get the idea anyway. Man, the Blofeld is really, you can come up with sounds that, I don't know, I'd be hard-pressed to come up with on any other synthesizer. Before we start programming, let me just go through a few that I've created already. Here's one that uses channel Aftertouch. I haven't modified it yet to use polyphonic Aftertouch. I mean, can you imagine that sound coming out of any other synth? I don't know. I have a hard time. I'd be hard pressed to do so. Let's see what else we have here. Oh, this one I did. This is just a basic Sawtooth sound, but the harder you play, the more detuned I think I used 3 oscillators. The more detuned the oscillators get from one another. So if you play very lightly, you can hear there's just barely any detune, but if you really pound it, so again, kind of another way to be expressive in your playing. So this one, the sound itself isn't really the interesting thing. It's what I did with the modulation. So I'll just, I'll play a few notes. It's just kind of a, I don't know, almost an FM type percussion sound. It's okay. It evolves a little bit. It's interesting enough. You play with the mod wheel. And suddenly it turns into Galaga. All right, so I think we're ready to actually start making our new sound. So let me go ahead and initialize it. That's going to be Shift, Utility, and Init Sound. And there we go. So we should just have, is it a basic Sawtooth? Yeah, basic Sawtooth wave from one oscillator. So what we'll do is we'll turn off the first oscillator. Off. There we go. So now, no sound. Great. Let's go ahead and scroll up through past oscillator 3. And we'll see noise. Let's crank that up. And hopefully we should get, yeah, there we go. Noise, noise. Sounds like on the Nintendo when somebody's trying to make a snare drum sound. They do it out of Noise Blast. Kind of fun. So I'm going to route this through my first filter, because these filters can run either in parallel or in series. So what we want to do now is we want to use the filter, we want to use key tracking on that filter to try to turn this into actual pitches. So right now the key tracking, I've switched to filter 1, Key tracking's at 0%. Let's crank it up to 100. So you can hear how the noise is getting filtered out more the further down we go on the keyboard, and it should be louder towards the high keys. So that's part number one of what we need to do. All right, so we go to our cutoff and our resonance. Let me turn the cutoff down a little bit. All right. All right, so that's not so bad. And then let's crank up the resonance. And this is where we're going to start to hear a pitch come through. Yeah, cool. So let's go back and adjust the cutoff, and I think by doing that we should be able to get the actual pitch that we want. So right now that's more of an F sharp than it is a C. So let's go ahead and there we go. We have our pitched noise. It's not, I mean, it's you know, it's a cool sound. But let's see if we can do some more with it. So I think first thing we want to do, let's adjust the envelope amount. Actually, that's kind of neat as it is. And let's go ahead and adjust the filter envelope a little bit. So if we turn the decay down, it should make that very, very quick. Yeah, I like it. Let's give it a little bit of sustain. So I'll turn up the release a little bit. Maybe go up to 60. Let's see how that sounds. Let's crank it up to 100. Actually, I think what we need to do is let's adjust our regular ADSR here on our amplifier. Alright, so I've got the release up on both the filter envelope and the amplifier envelope. That's a pretty cool sound. I like that already. Let's see what else we can do with this guy. Maybe we can add in something from the other oscillators. So let's turn on route him so that he's not going through the same filter. Should be able to turn that back. Let me see. Yeah, here's our filter routing. Okay, so they're running in parallel right now, which is good. So what I'm going to try to do is get the noise only running through our first filter, and then we'll run our regular oscillators here through our second guy. So that should be... Try this. Alright, so now we have a regular old pulse wave. Let's see if there's anything interesting that we can get out of the wavetables. So let's... Oops, here we go. Let's go to our various wavetables. Add that in. That might be interesting. So let's go ahead and let's modulate that using envelope 3. So we'll go down here to our envelopes. Try to make sure you can see this. Here's our envelope 3. And let's adjust the attack. So let's see what this sounds like. Let me turn down just a little bit. So we should start to hear it go through the wavetable. Let me do this a little quicker. Oh, I know, because I don't have enough. Here we go. This should do it. There we go. You actually need to give it an amount that you want it to be modulated. So go back to our envelope, go back to envelope 3. I think I just want it to stay resonant until I release it. So that means we're going to go to the decay. I'm just going to make it so that we never lose that resonance after it's built up. Fall back a little bit. Yeah, we'll just turn down the release just a little bit so that as it releases, you can hear that resonance just get cut back a little bit on oscillator 1. Pretty cool. All right, let's add in oscillator 2, because why not? And let's make it the same resonant wavetable. And I'm gonna basically modulate that the same way. So envelope 3. But let's detune it a little bit. Actually, first of all, let's see what it sounds like if we just kick it up a few semitones. That's pretty nice. I like that. Cool. Man, I don't know how much more I want to do with this sound. I like it already. We should add a little bit of vibrato, so let's go take a look at our LFO. Yeah, just a simple sine wave. Maybe kick down the speed a little bit. And we'll go to our matrix, and we'll make the source LFO1 times mod wheel. And I want it to affect the pitch of everything. And we'll just start with 39. I'm just going to reach over to the mod wheel here. All right, maybe not so deep, and maybe a little bit faster for the LFO. So we'll try 45 for this. See, that's not doing a lot for me. Do something with Aftertouch. So let's go into our matrix. Let's see what we can do with that. So again, we have polyphonic pressure as a source here, a modulation source. So let's just, until we figure out what we want to do with it, we'll crank it up and you can hear with the polyphonic aftertouch that I can, just using this stupid sound, I can modify the pitch of each note, the pitch bend on each note individually, which, you know, cool that I can do it, but I don't like the sound. So let's find another destination for it. I wonder what'll happen if we use it to adjust the resonance on filter 1. So maybe if we have the polyphonic pressure just modify the overall pitch ever so slightly. I mean, that's just a little something, you know, almost kind of a seasick sound. Sure, why not? All right, lastly, we should give it some effects here. So, effect number one, maybe a little bit of chorus. Maybe a phaser. Let's do a phaser. Let me just crank it up so we can hear the effect. Maybe turn down the feedback ever so slightly. All right, let's hear how that sounds. That's almost, you know, it's acting almost like another filter on the overall sound. Just a hair more. Yeah. So I don't love the reverbs on the Blofeld, but let's try it. Again, crank it up so we can hear it. Let's really take down. Yeah, see, that might work. That might end up being kind of a nice dark reverb sound. So let's throw this down to around 30. Let's make it bigger. Add a little bit of into the mix. we should do, I hear it distorting, so we should turn down the overall volume of this patch. So I believe that we go back here to our amplifier, and I'm just going to crank this down to 100. Yeah, let's blast it. All we need to do now is give it a name. Maybe this might be a good time for a montage. What do you think? All right, noise episode 1. There we go. Oh, we need to give it a category. My gosh, can't live with that. So we're gonna make this Atmo for atmosphere. Save it, and there we go. There's our sound. All right, my fellow Synthaholics, that's about all the time we have for this week. But before we go, a couple things. First of all, this hosts Epic Failures of the Week. Now, this episode took a good, 40 hours to put together. I know, crazy, huh? So let me tell you about some of the things that failed during the recording of this episode. Number 1, Pro Tools 10 failed many times on me. Crashing randomly during sessions. Crashing when I'm trying to open a session, crashing when I'm trying to close Pro Tools, causing blue screens when I'm trying to shut down Windows. Fail, fail, fail. Next, let's see, what's the model number on this mic? It's an Audio-Technica ATR3350. Went to plug it in for the first time, did not work. Fail. Audio interfaces that refuse to play nicely with one another using the ASIO for All driver, the M-Audio 410, the M-Audio Profire 2626, and the two Roland Boutiques refuse to play nicely with one another. Fail. And then, the biggest fail of the week, this guy here, who is not particularly capable at talking to a camera and remembering a script. So, speaking of which, let me try to remember the last thing I want to talk about. Oh, right, the closing jam. Yes. Let's end with the closing jam. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Facebook.com/thesynthezizeraddict. Twitter @synth_addict. Please comment, like, subscribe. See you next time. Bye-bye.